You've been playing small. Let's just get that out of the way. You've been showing up to conversations, meetings, negotiations, life hoping to be liked, hoping to fit in, hoping things will just work out. Guess what? That's not how winners think. If you want to outsmart anyone, and I mean anyone, you need to stop reacting and start strategizing. You need to stop overthinking and start executing. This isn't about being manipulative. This is about understanding the game that's already being played around you and mastering it. So today, I'm going to give you 5 rules. Not fluff, not theory. 5 sharp, tactical, real-world rules to take back control, command respect, and walk into any room like you own it. Because mentally, you... Let's go. In any interaction, whether it's a conversation, negotiation, meeting, or even a casual debate, the person who controls the frame controls the outcome, period. The frame is the unspoken set of rules or assumptions that define what the situation means. Most people walk into a conversation responding to someone else's frame without even realizing it. They let other people define what the interaction is about, what the power dynamics are, what's acceptable to say, and what success looks like. That's how you lose before you even open your mouth. To outsmart anyone, you need to flip that. You need to own the frame. That doesn't mean being the loudest or the most aggressive. It means setting the emotional and psychological context for the entire interaction and holding it no matter what comes at you. If you walk into a job interview thinking, I hope they like me, then the frame is they're the authority and I'm trying to win them over. You're already playing defense, but if you walk in thinking, let's see if this company is a good fit for me, suddenly the frame changes. You're evaluating them, you're not chasing, you're choosing, and people feel that. They respond to it often without knowing why. Controlling the frame starts with self-awareness. What story are you telling yourself before you walk into that room? What assumptions are you bringing with you? You can't lead the interaction if you're unconsciously following someone else's script. So, before any important conversation, you need to set your own frame deliberately. Decide what this moment means for you. Maybe the frame is, this is a strategic collaboration between equals. Maybe it's, this is a test of how well I hold my power under pressure. Whatever it is, own it. Then carry that energy into the room like it's non-negotiable, because it is. Next comes holding the frame. People will test you. They'll challenge your assumptions. They'll try to pull you into their world, their rules. It might look like passive-aggressive comments, high-pressure tactics, fake urgency, or even subtle guilt tripping. If you react emotionally or start explaining yourself, you've just surrendered the frame. Outsmarting someone isn't always about having the best logic or the right answer. It's about not getting pulled into their frame. It's about staying grounded, composed, and unshakably aligned with the story you are telling about what's happening. Here's a simple example. Imagine someone criticizes your idea in a meeting. If you rush to defend yourself, the frame becomes your idea is flawed and needs defending. But if you pause, look them in the eye, and calmly say, interesting, what specifically would you improve? You've just taken the frame back. You've made them engage on your level under your conditions. You haven't attacked, but you've stayed in control. Another powerful way to control the frame is through questions. Whoever asks the questions guides the direction. Questions force the other person to respond within the world you've created. They shift attention, they challenge assumptions, and they buy you time to think strategically while keeping the other person reacting. Want to flip the power dynamic instantly? Ask a question they didn't expect, one that reframes the entire conversation in your favor. Controlling the frame isn't about domination for its own sake. It's about clarity, presence, and power. It's about knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you will and won't engage with. Once you start doing this consistently, people will feel your presence differently. They'll respect you more, even if they can't articulate why. You'll stop being someone who gets pushed around by louder voices or stronger personalities, and you'll start becoming someone others watch before they speak. Control the frame, and you control the game every time. Most people talk too much. They fill every silence, rush to respond, and treat conversation like a race to get their point across. That's a mistake, and it's one smart people never make. If you want to outsmart someone, one of the most powerful tools you can use is the pause, the space, the silence. It's subtle, but when used deliberately, it completely shifts the dynamic of any interaction. The pause is more than just silence, it's control. It shows that you're comfortable not reacting right away, that you're thinking, processing, weighing your words carefully. And that unsettles people because most people are addicted to noise and instant feedback. When you pause, you create a vacuum. And here's the truth, people hate vacuums. They'll rush to fill them, often saying more than they should or revealing something they didn't intend to. You gain leverage just by doing less. When you're in a negotiation or heated exchange and someone throws a challenge or a pointed question at you, the knee-jerk reaction is to respond immediately, usually emotionally. But when you pause, breathe, and let the moment hang for just a few seconds, you interrupt that momentum, you make them wait. And in that wait, you gain power. You show that you are not reactive. You show that you're in control of your emotions and the tempo of the interaction. That's dominance, not in a loud, brash way, but in a quiet, unshakable one. Pausing also gives you a mental edge. It buys you time. Most people think faster than they speak, but they don't give themselves the space to use that advantage. They rush in, talk over themselves, over-explain, and that rush creates mistakes. But when you train yourself to pause before responding, to sit in that discomfort, you give your brain a moment to catch up and assess. That's when you can spot manipulation, reframe the narrative, or simply say less and still win. Because often, the smartest response is the shortest one. In interviews, negotiations, or confrontations, pausing makes you appear more thoughtful, more confident, more strategic. Imagine someone challenges your qualifications or questions your credibility. If you fire back defensively, you validate their challenge. But if you pause, maintain eye contact, and then calmly respond, maybe even with a question, you've completely flipped the power dynamic. You've just told them, without words, that you don't rattle easily. That's intimidating in the best way. There's also a psychological layer. Silence creates tension. Most people are trained to relieve that tension immediately. But if you can hold it, if you can get comfortable with that slight awkwardness, you make the other person uncomfortable first. You shift the emotional weight onto them. Suddenly, they're wondering if they said something wrong. They start second-guessing. You didn't have to say a word, and yet you just gained the upper hand. This is why some of the most powerful communicators in the world speak slowly, deliberately, with pauses, because they understand that dominance isn't about speed. It's about presence. It's about being fully in the moment and making the other person feel that if you can pause before you speak, people will lean in. They'll listen more carefully. They'll sense that your words carry weight, that you're not just talking, you're choosing your words. In a world that values speed, the pause is a weapon. It's counterintuitive. It's bold. And when used with intention, it makes you unshakable. So the next time you feel the urge to rush, to fill the silence, to immediately respond, don't stop. Breathe. Hold the moment. Let the pause do the heavy lifting. Because in that space, you win. Most people think that to show intelligence or dominance, they need to talk more, give advice, make statements, prove their point. That's exactly the wrong approach. If you want to outsmart someone, don't rush to tell. Ask. The smartest, most strategic people don't dominate a room by talking the most. They dominate by asking the right questions. Because when you ask, you lead. You control where the conversation goes. You expose what others are trying to hide. And most importantly, you learn more than you reveal. Statements can be challenged. They can create resistance. But questions disarm. Questions make people open up, explain themselves, and expose their thinking. You're no longer stuck in a back-and-forth debate. You've moved into the driver's seat, guiding the interaction subtly but powerfully. This is especially true when the other person is trying to show off, intimidate, or sell you something. When you start asking questions instead of reacting emotionally, you turn the tables. You shift the focus away from yourself and put the pressure on them. This tactic is wildly effective in high-stakes conversations. Let's say someone criticizes your idea. Instead of defending it, which immediately puts you on your back foot, try this. What would you have done differently? Or can you walk me through your reasoning? You haven't defended yourself. You haven't even agreed. What you've done is flip the burden of explanation onto them. Now they have to justify their thinking. And in doing so, they often reveal inconsistencies or gaps. You stay calm, composed, and in control. Smart questioning also allows you to gather critical intel. You can learn people's motivations fears, biases, and assumptions just by listening closely to how they respond. Their tone, body language, even the way they dodge or hesitate tells you something valuable. This gives you an edge because when you understand what drives someone, you know exactly how to influence them. And all you had to do was ask. Here's the real secret. Most people love talking about themselves. They want to be heard, understood, validated. So when you ask questions, especially thoughtful ones, you build trust without giving away your own position. You make people feel important, like their opinions matter, even if you're dissecting their logic the entire time. This is how master negotiators, interrogators, and top-level leaders operate. They ask and listen first, speak later, and when they finally do speak, their words land hard because by then they know exactly what to say. Asking instead of telling also keeps you emotionally neutral. When you're not trying to force a point or win an argument, you're calmer, you're analyzing, you're adjusting in real time. And that calmness, it gives you power. People feel it. They sense that you're not emotionally hooked, and that makes you unpredictable, which makes you dangerous in the best way. You can't be manipulated because you're too busy gathering data and steering the conversation subtly toward the outcome you want. This doesn't mean you ask just to ask. It means you ask with purpose. Questions should challenge, redirect, or reveal. They should be clear, direct, and intentional. Why do you believe that? What result are you expecting? What makes you so sure? These are not filler questions. They are tools. They expose weaknesses, test assumptions, and keep you one step ahead. The truth is, the person who asks the questions holds the power. They don't need to talk over others. They don't need to prove anything. They just need to listen, process, and strike at the right moment with clarity, precision, and strategy. So next time you feel pressure to explain, defend, or convince, don't ask, then listen. Because in that quiet, controlled space, you'll find exactly what you need to win. Mirroring is a psychological technique that might sound simple on the surface, but carries incredible power when used skillfully. At its core, mirroring means subtly matching the other person's behavior, whether it's their body language, tone of voice, choice of words, or even their energy level. This isn't about mimicking or mocking. It's about creating a sense of rapport and connection that makes the other person feel understood and comfortable. When people feel that connection, they become more open, more cooperative, and crucially, more susceptible to influence. The reason mirroring works so well is that humans are wired for empathy and social bonding. Our brains respond positively when we see ourselves reflected back, even unconsciously. It creates trust almost instantly because it signals, hey, we're on the same wavelength. This is why great negotiators, salespeople, and leaders all use mirroring instinctively. They know it breaks down barriers, lowers defenses, and sets the stage for persuasion. When you want to outsmart someone, mirroring is your silent weapon. Imagine you're in a tense negotiation and the other person is speaking softly, leaning back and keeping their arms crossed. If you come in loud, aggressive, and animated, you're only escalating the tension. But if you slow down, soften your tone, and adopt a similar posture, you create subconscious alignment. The other person feels more comfortable and less defensive. They're more likely to listen and less likely to push back aggressively. You haven't surrendered your power. Instead, you've gained influence through subtle empathy. But mirroring goes beyond body language. It extends to language patterns and word choice. If your counterpart uses specific phrases or jargon, echoing some of that language shows that you understand their world. It makes your ideas resonate more because they're being framed in terms they already accept. For example, if someone repeatedly talks about efficiency or results, weaving those words naturally into your responses can help you build alignment without over-persuasion. One of the most powerful parts of mirroring is that it can help you read people better. When you start to consciously mirror, you become more attuned to the small cues others give off. Micro-expressions, subtle shifts in posture, changes in tone. These details reveal what they're really thinking or feeling beneath the surface. Maybe they say yes, but their body tightens. Maybe they nod, but their eyes dart away. Mirroring forces you to slow down and notice these signals, giving you a critical edge to adjust your approach or probe deeper. However, it's important to use mirroring strategically and authentically. If it's too obvious or mechanical, people feel manipulated and pull away. The key is subtlety, just enough to create connection without crossing into imitation. It's a dance, not a copycat game. And when done well, it feels natural to both parties. Mirroring also helps you regulate your own emotional state. By aligning your energy with the other person's, you stay grounded and present. You don't get overwhelmed by their intensity or dismiss them if they're low energy. Instead, you meet them where they are, which makes communication smoother and more effective. This emotional attunement is part of what makes the technique so powerful for dominance, not by overpowering, but by sinking and then gently leading. In high-stakes scenarios, mirroring can shift the entire tone of the interaction. When two people are locked in conflict, even small gestures of alignment can break tension and open pathways for compromise or agreement. It's a form of nonverbal diplomacy that speaks louder than words. You show respect and understanding without losing your strategic advantage. Ultimately, mirroring is about creating connection while holding power. It's about stepping into someone's world just enough to build trust so you can guide them where you want to go. Outsmarting someone isn't about being louder or more forceful. It's about being smarter, more attuned, and more deliberate. Mirroring gives you that edge. It's the difference between pushing against a wall and opening a door. When you master this, you don't just participate in conversations, you lead them. Ending every interaction on your terms is one of the most overlooked but powerful strategies for total dominance. So often conversations, negotiations, or debates end with whoever speaks last or louder appearing to have the final say, but that's surface level. True control comes from deciding how, when, and on what note the interaction wraps up, because that last impression sticks far longer than anything said in the middle. When you consciously plan your exit, you shift from being reactive to being proactive. You're no longer at the mercy of others' agendas or emotional swings. Instead, you close with intention, leaving your mark and setting the stage for what comes next. This means you control the emotional tone, the takeaway, and even the momentum after the conversation ends. When people walk away thinking about your words, your ideas, and your terms, you've won more than a debate. You've shaped their reality. The way most people leave conversations is by default. They just stop talking or trail off when the energy dies down. That leaves the door open for misunderstandings, unresolved tension, or the other party getting the last word later, whether in their own mind or in follow-up communication. But when you end on your terms, you close the loop cleanly. You deliver a summary that reinforces your main point, or you ask a final question that leaves the other person reflecting. You might even set up a clear next step so there's no ambiguity about what happens next. This clarity strengthens your position because it shows you're in control, organized, and confident. Ending on your terms also means mastering timing. Sometimes the best move is to stop talking before the conversation reaches its natural conclusion. That silence can be disarming. It makes people lean in, wonder what you're thinking, or reassess their own words. When you leave something unsaid or pause right before the tension breaks, you hold power because you're creating anticipation and curiosity. People will remember that moment and often attribute it to your confidence or authority. Another crucial element is the emotional tone you leave behind. If you finish heated and defensive, that hostility lingers. If you end calm, composed, and even gracious, you leave the door open for future interactions on your terms. People respect strength wrapped in poise. It makes you seem bigger than the moment, above petty conflicts or emotional triggers. This emotional control signals dominance because it shows you're the one who's stable and grounded, no matter what drama or chaos happened earlier. A practical way to own your ending is by using what I call the power statement, a concise sentence or phrase that sums up your position, asserts your confidence, and leaves no room for doubt. It could be as simple as, "I'm confident this approach will work because," or "let's revisit this after you've had time to consider." That statement signals you're not desperate to keep the conversation going or to convince someone on the spot. You're setting boundaries and expectations, which shifts the power dynamic in your favor. Equally important is how you handle follow-ups after the conversation ends. If you control the narrative during the interaction, but then let others fill in the gaps afterward, you've lost control. Always be the first to send a recap, an email, or a message that frames what was decided or what next steps look like. That continued control extends your influence beyond the immediate moment and cements your dominance. Finally, ending on your terms builds your reputation. People start to recognize you as someone who owns their space, their voice, and their outcomes. They know you're deliberate and not easily pushed around. That reputation becomes a force multiplier. It affects how people approach you in future interactions, often making them more deferential or cooperative before you even say a word. In the end, mastering how to end interactions on your terms isn't about arrogance or control for control's sake. It's about respect, respect for yourself and for the process. It's about making sure your time, energy, and ideas are honored. When you do this consistently, you stop being a participant in conversations and become the one who leads them. And that's total dominance. You've now got the blueprint, the 5 rules that shift the game completely in your favor. Controlling the frame, mastering the pause, asking instead of telling, mirroring with purpose, and ending every interaction on your terms aren't just tactics. They're mindset shifts that change how you show up in every moment, every conversation, every challenge. Outsmarting anyone isn't about being smarter than them on paper. It's about being sharper, calmer, and more deliberate when it counts. It's about owning your power quietly but unmistakably, so others naturally follow your lead without you having to shout or push. Start applying these rules today. Watch how people respond when you stop reacting and start leading. Because when you do, dominance isn't something you chase, it's something you command. And that's how you win every time.